The world has entered a new era. We have all but depleted the Earth's once vast natural resources. Numerous threats to our survival now face us. Global warming, we're running out of natural gas, the end of the fossil fuel economy. What's facing us next?
A food crisis of global proportions that could plunge tens of millions of people more deeply into poverty, affecting a lot of children.
Soldiers guarding bags of wheat, an indication of how serious the situation has become.
Food riots.
In Haiti, deadly riots over food prices, several killed in recent days.
We're running out of water. We're running out of farmable soil.
We are, right now, without changes, we are heading right off a cliff.
But just over the past year, the cost of food has, in some places, risen by as much as 100%. Predictably, this has hit the hardest, taken the worst immediate toll in some of the world's poorest countries.
2009 will mark an historic fall in global food production. Tens of millions of people will die from hunger this year.
When we look at why kids die under the age of 5, you can often say, okay, it was pneumonia or diarrheal disease, but in fact, if those kids had had better nutrition, they would not have died.
In the next few years, the choices that we make will help determine the kind of country and world that we will leave to our children and our grandchildren.
For the first time in human history, we have the science and the technology and the means and the know-how to eliminate hunger from humanity.
In a way, the only good thing out of the food price crisis is people realise that we need small farmers in agriculture to produce their own food and also to produce for local and more distant markets.
There's consequences to every decision we make every day about what we eat. Supporting the farmers markets, buying your meat and fish from sustainable fisheries and ranches. You're eating the food that's most nutritious, and you're preserving the environment for the future for the children.
The world needs to find another way to feed itself. The world needs to learn a new approach. The world needs biointensive farming. John Jevons has been a biointensive farmer for 40 years. He, his wife Cynthia, and his daughter Rose live and work on this farm to grow food and teach others the Grow Biointensive Method that he pioneered. This technique has already helped millions of people in the developing world to feed themselves.
One of the ways I like to look at it is it's biologically intensive food raising.
The Grow Biointensive Method is a technique that can grow the most amount of food on the smallest amount of land with the least amount of water, all without taking nutrients out of the soil or introducing toxins into the environment. Biointensive farming isn't a new or untested technique. It has been practiced in places like China, Greece, Japan, Latin America, Russia, and Ethiopia for millennia. In the mid-20th century, Alan Chadwick combined the biodynamic and French intensive methods of organic gardening into an integrated growing system. John Jevons now carries on Alan's work with focused research and careful measurements, building on a wealth of previous knowledge. Don't today's modern farming techniques promise to grow enough food for everyone? Haven't we made incredible progress in farming technology over the past century? There is a disturbing link between how we feed ourselves and our environment.
You said in that article of October 12th, when we eat from the industrial food system, we are eating oil and spewing greenhouse gases. Now, Michael, I don't ever remember sitting down to a meal of yummy petroleum.
How do you make fertilizer? It's made with natural gas, diesel oil. So we actually have to spread huge quantities of oil or fossil fuels on our fields to keep the food coming.
These artificial chemical additives are toxic to the environment and deplete the soil of nutrients. Prices of fertilizer have doubled since the beginning of 2008. Hardest hit are third world farmers. Biointensive farming uses 50 to 100% less manufactured organic fertilizer. It also uses 67 to 88% less water compared to conventional methods. It also produces 2 to 6 times the crop yield of so-called modern farming techniques. How does biointensive farming work? Biointensive farming consists of 8 elements: deep soil preparation, composting, intensive and companion planting, carbon farming, raising high-calorie crops for maximum yield, and free open pollinated seeds, combined with a synergistic, holistic approach to growing. Deep soil preparation. One of the basic methods of biointensive farming involves the creation of carefully prepared raised garden beds. It's called double digging. It means that the soil is dug down to at least 24 inches. Raised beds make weeding easier and minimizes soil loss. Double digging also allows for very close spacing of plants, which promote very deep roots, so more air, water, and nutrients are able to get to the plant. Growing soil is the key to creating a sustainable, healthy farm over the long term. Composting. Many plants that feed us remove nutrients from the soil. Composting replaces these nutrients. This is very important for maintaining the soil's health and fertility.
Compost can hold 6 times its weight in water, so this helps drought-proof the soil.
Another benefit of composting is that it helps to sustain an important community of microbes in the soil. Microbes nurture the plant roots by drawing nitrogen out of the atmosphere and deposit it into the soil, without having to rely on fossil fuel-based fertilizers. Microbes also synthesize antibiotics that help the plant protect themselves from disease and insects. Intensive planting. With intensive planting techniques, it's possible to plant 4 times the amount of crops in a given area. Seeds are started in flats and are then carefully transplanted with very close spacing so that the leaves of the mature plants will touch one another. This creates something like an umbrella or a microclimate over the bed, which reduces the loss of water. It also prevents the growth of weeds, conserves carbon dioxide that the plants need for growth, and protects the beneficial microbes living in the soil. Companion planting. Many plants complement one another and grow better together. Planted the right way, some plants can keep garden pests away or attract beneficial insects, but you need them both because harmful insects are food for the good guys. 37% of all crops grown in the United States are lost due to insects, birds, rodents, and weeds. It's a startling fact that if you use all of these herbicides, pesticides, rodenticides, and birdicides, 42% of crops are lost. We are losing more crops by using these toxins than we do by not using them.
With Grow Biointensive, we grow generally 2 to 4 times the yield, and we only lose 5% of the crop. So we're talking about not having much crop loss due to all of these things and not having to use toxins.
Carbon farming. Some 50 to 60% of all the crops grown on a modern biointensive farm are dual-purpose crops that provide both calories for humans and an abundance of material to build compost piles. While current farming methods take nutrients away from the soil, biointensive farming does the opposite. It gives the soil nutrients by planting the right crops, rotating them, and using their roots as compost. High-calorie crop farming. High-calorie crop farming means that farmers grow the most efficient calorie-producing plants for feeding people. For example, about 30% of all crops that grow on this biointensive farm are high-calorie root crops, like potatoes, sweet potatoes, parsnips, garlic, and others. Potatoes alone produce up to 20 times the amount of calories per unit area and per unit of time compared to soybeans. When you take into account the world's critically dwindling food supply, it becomes vital to grow the most amount of calories, nutrients, vitamins, and minerals on the smallest area possible in the least amount of time and with the least amount of water. Open pollinated seeds. Commercial seeds have been created by corporations for a more energy-intensive, chemically dependent growing environment. They don't have much diversity and cannot be grown in many areas of the world where food is most critically needed. They are also often too expensive for the third world to afford. Open pollinated seeds have been selected over many generations because of their ability to adapt to diverse environments without having smaller yields. Farmers can also grow and plant their own seeds that they can use from one year to the next, as they have for thousands of years. Small communities in over 148 countries use the biointensive method. It has already saved millions of people from hunger, malnutrition, and death. It works in most climates and any soil. It uses the same elements as other forms of agriculture: seeds, soil, nutrients in organic fertilizer form, the sun, and the air. It provides more food per unit area, conserves resources, and grows, not pollutes, the environment. Biointensive farming uses all the accumulated knowledge of time-tested farming techniques. Some of that knowledge is very subtle and perhaps seems obvious at first, but the system has worked flawlessly for millennia. Biointensive farming combines all of these elements in a simple, practical, and efficient way. Biointensive farming brings the promise of not only feeding the world, it could also save it.